He washed his hands. He stood before the crowd, lifted a bowl of water, and made a show of innocence that would become one of the most haunting gestures in all of human history. But here's the question that has echoed through 2,000 years of silence. Did the water ever truly cleanse him? And what happened to the man who condemned the Son of God to die, after the cross had fallen silent and the earth had stopped shaking? This is not a story that ends at Golgotha. This is where it truly begins. Pontius Pilate was not a weak man. He was a Roman prefect, appointed by Emperor Tiberius himself, a man of calculated authority and iron nerve. He had served in Judea since roughly 26 AD, navigating the volatile politics of a land that never fully accepted its Roman overlords. He was pragmatic. He was ruthless when he needed to be. He had put down riots with blood. He had raided temple treasuries to fund aqueducts. The Jewish leaders despised him, and he despised them in return. But on one particular morning, in the city of Jerusalem, something shook his composure. Something reached through the armor of Roman pragmatism and touched a nerve that should not have existed in a man like him. His name was Jesus of Nazareth. When they dragged Jesus before Pilate, covered in the marks of a night already spent in abuse, Pilate saw something he had not anticipated. He interrogated this prisoner. He looked him in the eye. And the man who stood before him spoke with a calm that was, by all accounts, deeply unsettling. "You would have no power over me unless it had been given to you from above," Jesus told him. And Pilate, the man who crushed uprisings without blinking, faltered. He tried to release him. 3 times, he called Jesus innocent. He offered the crowd a choice: Barabbas, a convicted murderer, or this man from Galilee. He sent Jesus to Herod, hoping to be relieved of the decision. His own wife sent him a message while he sat on the judgment seat, trembling with a dream she had received about this righteous man, urging her husband not to harm him. And yet, the crowd roared. The chief priests pressed. The threat of a riot, the threat of reports reaching Caesar that Pilate had protected a man who claimed to be king of the Jews. It was too much. Pilate made his choice. He ordered the crucifixion, and then he took the bowl, and he washed his hands, and he declared, "I am innocent of this man's blood." The crowd responded, "His blood be on us and on our children." What no one writes in the history books is what Pilate's face looked like in the hours that followed. What no one records is whether he ate that night, whether he slept, whether he stood at some window in the Praetorium and watched the direction of Golgotha as darkness fell across Jerusalem, not the natural darkness of evening, but the strange, terrible midday darkness that even secular Roman historians would later note with bewilderment. An eclipse that should not have happened. A sky that closed like a wound. The earth shook. The temple veil tore from top to bottom. And somewhere in his palace, Pontius Pilate sat with clean hands and a soul that was anything but. Here is what history does not easily tell you, and what has driven scholars, theologians, and historians into fierce debate for centuries. What happened next? What became of the man who handed Jesus of Nazareth over to be crucified? The answer is darker than most people know. For several years after the crucifixion, Pilate remained in power. On the surface, life continued. Rome governed, taxes were collected, soldiers marched. But beneath the surface, Pilate's grip on Judea was visibly beginning to fracture. The man who had once ruled with cold efficiency began to make decisions that seemed, even by Roman standards, increasingly erratic and brutal. Around 36 AD, something happened that would finally shatter his career entirely. A Samaritan prophet had gathered a crowd on Mount Gerizim, promising to reveal ancient sacred vessels buried there by Moses. The crowd was unarmed, largely religious. Pilate's response was catastrophic. He sent soldiers. He had the group ambushed. Many were killed. Many more were captured and executed. The Samaritans were furious. They brought a formal complaint, not to Pilate, but to Vitellius, the legate of Syria, Pilate's direct superior. And Vitellius did something that stunned the Roman administrative world. He removed Pilate from his post, immediately, without ceremony, without the honor of a formal transition. After a decade of governing one of Rome's most volatile provinces, Pontius Pilate was recalled to Rome in disgrace. Now, here is where the story begins to grow dark in ways that no official document can fully explain. Pilate was ordered to appear before Emperor Tiberius to answer for the massacre. But by the time he arrived in Rome, Tiberius was dead. Think about that. The one man who had the authority to judge him, the one verdict that could have closed the chapter on his career, vanished before it could be rendered. Some would call it fortune. Others would call it something else entirely. There is a tradition, ancient and persistent, that suggests Pilate never found peace after that. That the weight of what he had done in Jerusalem years before had begun its slow, invisible work on him. What happened to Pilate in Rome?
Here the historical record grows thin, and it grows thin in the way that the worst stories often do, not with a clear ending,
but with a silence that is somehow louder than any account could be. Some ancient sources, including the early Christian writer Eusebius of Caesarea, preserving even older traditions, state plainly that Pilate was driven to take his own life. That he killed himself, whether by blade or by poison, whether in exile or in Rome itself. The tradition holds that the man who condemned Jesus died by his own hand, overtaken at last by something: grief, guilt, despair, political ruin, that made continuing to live unbearable. And what if that is true? What if in the final silence of his life, stripped of power, stripped of purpose, surrounded by the rubble of a career demolished, and a conscience that had never truly recovered from one morning in Jerusalem? What if Pilate arrived at the same terrible conclusion that haunted Judas Iscariot? That some debts cannot be outlived? There are those who dismiss this tradition, who say it is too convenient, too theologically tidy, too much like the kind of ending a Christian writer would invent for the villain of the story. And perhaps they are right to ask the question. History deserves scrutiny, but scrutiny cuts both ways. Because the absence of any record of Pilate's recovery, his rehabilitation, his return to honor, that silence is its own testimony. Men of his rank did not simply disappear from Roman history unless something went profoundly, irreparably wrong. Then there are the legends. And here is where the story crosses from history into something far stranger, the territory where human memory and human fear converge. In the traditions preserved across medieval Europe, particularly in German and Swiss lore, a mountain came to bear his name, Mount Pilatus near Lucerne in Switzerland. The legend holds that his body was transported there after his death, that it was thrown into a lake on that mountain, and that the lake would not keep him, that his body was drawn out, that the waters themselves seemed to refuse it, and that strange storms and disturbances plagued the region because of it. Fishermen on that lake, in centuries past, refused to cast their nets on certain dates. Pilgrims were warned away from the mountain. A local ordinance, recorded in medieval documents, actually prohibited people from throwing stones into the lake, because locals believed the disturbance would awaken something. Summon storms bring catastrophe. What are we to make of that? A mountain, a lake, a dead man's body that could not find rest. And in Ethiopia, of all places, there exists a church tradition so ancient it reaches back to the earliest centuries of Christianity. In that tradition, Pontius Pilate is not a villain. He is venerated. The Coptic Orthodox Church of Ethiopia actually observes a feast day in his honor on June 25th, believing that after the crucifixion, Pilate became a believer, that the signs and wonders of that terrible day broke him open, and that in the years that followed, he turned toward the God whose Son he had condemned. Some believe. Some believe he repented. Some believe that the washing of hands was not purely a theatrical gesture, but the desperate act of a man who knew, on some level, that he was doing something he could not undo, and was terrified. His wife, Claudia Procula, is remembered in the Orthodox Christian tradition as a saint, she who had the dream, she who warned him. Some traditions hold that she did eventually become a Christian believer. What does that tell us about the household of Pontius Pilate? What conversations happened behind closed doors? After Jerusalem, after the darkness and the earthquake and the reports that the tomb was empty, what did they say to each other in the long, quiet evenings of their exile? Because exile is what the dominant historical tradition gives us, not triumph, not honor, not a quiet retirement to a villa near the sea, exile, disgrace. The slow erosion of everything a Roman man of his class was supposed to live for: rank, reputation, power, legacy. Imagine what that felt like. To have held the fate of an entire province in your hands for 10 years, to have answered to no one but the emperor himself, and then to be nothing. To walk through Rome as a man who had failed, who had been recalled in shame, who carried the twin stains of a massacre in Samaria, and the memory of a man he had declared innocent and crucified anyway. There is a particular species of guilt that is worse than ordinary guilt.
ברוך אתה אדוני, אלוהינו מלך העולם. המוציא לשם מן הארץ. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני עדשד. ברוך אתה, אדוני, עושה השלום.
See this here. It is clearly an AVG.
Augustus? Are you certain? This changes everything. That is too much for this grain. The scales do not lie, friend. Pay the amount.
Let him be crucified!
Release Barabbas!
We have no king but Caesar.
Be quiet! I find no case against him! What is it you wish me to do? The land is ours! We will remain! The land is ours! We will remain! Stop resisting! Let go of me! We have a right to be here!
Moses commanded us a law, a heritage of the congregation.
For Rome! To victory! Push forward! Hold your ground!
Move, old man. You are coming with us.
Handle those amphorae with care, they are Greek wine.
We are moving as fast as we can, master.
Clear the main dock, more ropes on the mainmast.
One more time. Heave, ho!
O Saint Theodore the General, pray for us that we may receive the mercy of the Lord.
Hear my voice, O Lord, and guard my heart against the darkness of this world. Grant me strength and understanding.
Take, eat. This is my body, broken for you. This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Drink in remembrance of me. What is truth? I washed my hands, yet the stain remains.
May this smoke rise before you, O Lord, as the evening sacrifice.
Dance and rejoice before the bride and groom. May their lives be filled with joy.
ברוך אתה אדוני, אלוהינו מלך העולם.
המוציא לצ'ם מן הארץ.